Sarah Mitchell had always been different. Growing up in the small town of Cedar Falls, Montana, she was the girl who preferred hunting with her grandfather to playing with dolls. While other kids were inside watching cartoons, she was learning to track deer through the wilderness and understanding wind patterns that could affect a bullet's path. Her grandfather, a Vietnam veteran named Frank, saw something special in her steady hands and sharp eyes. He taught her that shooting wasn't just about pulling a trigger, it was about patience, breathing, understanding your environment, and respecting the weapon in your hands. By age 12, Sarah could hit a tin can from 200 yards with his old hunting rifle. When Sarah turned 18, she made a decision that shocked everyone in her small town. She enlisted in the Marine Corps. Her parents were worried. Her friends thought she was crazy. And some people in town whispered that the military was no place for a young woman. Sarah didn't care about their opinions. She had bigger dreams than staying in Cedar Falls forever. Boot camp at Paris Island was brutal. The drill instructors pushed every recruit to their breaking point and beyond. Sarah was one of only 15 women in a company of 80 recruits. Some of the male recruits thought she wouldn't last a week. They made jokes about her small frame and questioned whether she had the strength for military life. Sarah proved them wrong day after day. When they had to carry heavy packs for miles, she kept pace with the strongest men. When they did obstacle courses, she found ways to use her smaller size to her advantage. During weapons training, she consistently scored among the highest in marksmanship. Her drill instructors began to notice her exceptional shooting skills. After graduating boot camp as one of the top recruits in her class, Sarah was assigned to infantry training. This was where she would learn to be a real Marine, not just someone who could march and follow orders. The training was intense, covering everything from combat tactics to advanced weapons systems. During a training exercise in the California desert, Sarah's platoon was practicing urban warfare scenarios. They were supposed to clear a mock village, while enemy instructors tried to eliminate them with paint rounds. Sarah was assigned as a rifleman, but she noticed something the others missed. From her position, she could see movement in a building that her squad was about to enter. An instructor was positioned there, ready to eliminate her teammates. Without hesitation, Sarah took a careful shot with her M4 rifle from nearly 300 yards away. The paint round hit the instructor square in the chest. Her squad leader, Sergeant Rodriguez, couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. Most Marines could barely hit targets at that range with their standard rifles, let alone during a chaotic training exercise. He immediately recommended Sarah for advanced marksmanship training. The advanced training took place at Camp Pendleton, where Sarah learned about different types of rifles, scopes, and shooting techniques. She studied ballistics, weather effects on bullet trajectory, and camouflage techniques. Her instructors were impressed by how quickly she absorbed complex information about long-range shooting. One instructor, Gunnery Sergeant Williams, had served as a sniper in Iraq. He had seen many talented shooters over his career. But Sarah was different. She had an almost supernatural ability to read wind conditions and make adjustments for perfect shots. More importantly, she remained calm under pressure, never letting emotions affect her accuracy. After completing the advanced marksmanship course, Sarah was recommended for Scout Sniper School. This was one of the most challenging courses in the Marine Corps, with a failure rate of over 60%. Many Marines who attempted the course were already experienced infantry soldiers with years of combat experience. Scout Sniper School was 13 weeks of pure hell. Students learned advanced camouflage, stalking techniques, observation skills, and precision shooting. They had to remain hidden for hours while instructors tried to spot them. They learned to move so silently that they could get within feet of their targets without being detected. Sarah excelled at the stalking exercises. Her small frame, which some had seen as a weakness, became a huge advantage. She could fit into hiding spots that larger Marines couldn't use. Her grandfather's hunting lessons had taught her patience and how to move through terrain without leaving traces. The shooting portions of the course were where Sarah truly shone. She consistently hit targets at ranges that challenged even experienced shooters. During one exercise, she made a shot at 847 yards in challenging wind conditions that impressed even the most skeptical instructors. But the course wasn't just about shooting. Students had to learn to work as a team with a spotter, gathering intelligence, and making critical decisions under pressure. Sarah was paired with Corporal Jake Thompson, a veteran Marine who had initially doubted that a woman could succeed in the sniper program. Jake quickly changed his opinion about Sarah. During training exercises, she demonstrated remarkable focus and decision-making abilities. When they were assigned to observe and report on simulated enemy movements, Sarah could spot details that others missed. Her reports were always accurate and complete. The final test of Scout Sniper School was a week-long field exercise in the mountains of California. Students had to survive on minimal supplies while completing various missions. They were constantly being tested by instructors who tried to break them mentally and physically. Sarah and Jake were assigned to observe a valley and report on all movement for 72 hours straight. They had to remain completely hidden while enemy instructors actively searched for them. If they were spotted, they would fail the entire course. For 3 days and nights, Sarah and Jake lay motionless in carefully constructed hide sites. They took turns sleeping for short periods, while the other maintained watch. Sarah's ability to remain perfectly still for hours impressed Jake, who had served with some of the best Marines in the Corps. On the second night, an instructor came within 5 feet of their position during a search. Sarah controlled her breathing so perfectly that the instructor walked right past them. Jake later said he had never seen someone remain so calm in such a tense situation. When the exercise ended, Sarah and Jake had completed all their assigned tasks without being detected. Their instructors were amazed by the quality of their reports and their ability to remain hidden for the entire period. Sarah graduated from Scout Sniper School as the honor graduate of her class. She was the first woman to achieve this distinction, and only the third woman ever to complete the course successfully. The achievement made headlines in military publications and inspired other women to pursue challenging roles in the Marine Corps. After graduation, Sarah was assigned to the 1st Marine Division at Camp Pendleton. She would be part of a sniper team, preparing for deployment to Afghanistan. The war was still active, and skilled snipers were in high demand for operations against Taliban forces. Her new unit commander, Major Harrison, had initial reservations about having a female sniper in a combat role, not because he doubted her abilities, but because he was concerned about how other units might react. Some infantry units had never worked with female snipers before. Sarah's first assignment was supporting a reconnaissance mission in the mountains near Camp Pendleton. Her job was to provide overwatch for a squad conducting training exercises. If enemy instructors tried to ambush the squad, Sarah would eliminate them with paint rounds. The exercise began at dawn, with Sarah and her spotter, Sergeant Collins, moving into position on a ridge overlooking the training area. Sarah carefully studied the terrain through her scope, identifying likely positions where enemy instructors might try to set up ambushes. For 6 hours, Sarah maintained watch over the training area. Her focus never wavered. Even as the California sun beat down on her position, she spotted movement in 3 different locations where instructors were positioning themselves to attack the training squad. When the squad moved into the kill zone, Sarah was ready. She eliminated all 3 instructor positions with precise shots before they could fire on the squad. Her performance was so impressive that word spread quickly through the division about the new female sniper who couldn't miss. Major Harrison's doubts began to fade as he heard reports about Sarah's performance. During subsequent training exercises, she consistently demonstrated exceptional shooting skills and tactical awareness. Other Marines in the division started requesting her support for their training missions. But Sarah's biggest test was yet to come. Orders arrived for her unit to deploy to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. She would be part of a mission to hunt down high-value Taliban targets in the dangerous mountains along the Pakistan border. The news of her deployment created controversy within the military. Some officials questioned whether women should be assigned to direct combat roles. Even as snipers, critics argued that the physical and psychological demands of combat were too much for female soldiers. Sarah ignored the controversy and focused on preparing for deployment. She spent countless hours studying satellite images of Afghanistan, learning about Taliban tactics, and practicing shots at the extreme ranges she might encounter in the mountains. Her unit conducted final training exercises in the desert of California, simulating the conditions they would face in Afghanistan. Sarah's performance during these exercises silenced most of her critics within the unit. She demonstrated that she could operate effectively in harsh conditions while maintaining the precision required for sniper operations. 2 weeks before deployment, Sarah received a call that would change everything. Her grandfather Frank had suffered a heart attack and was in the hospital in Montana. Sarah immediately requested emergency leave to visit him. When she arrived at the hospital, Frank was weak but conscious. He smiled when he saw Sarah in her Marine uniform, proud of what she had accomplished. They talked for hours about her training and her upcoming deployment. Frank gave Sarah a gift that surprised her. It was a small piece of metal from a bullet he had recovered after a firefight in Vietnam. He had carried it for over 40 years, as a reminder of how close he had come to death and how precious life was. "This kept me focused when things got tough over there," Frank told her. "Remember that every shot you take could save lives or take one. That's a heavy responsibility, but I know you can handle it." Frank passed away peacefully the next morning, just hours after their conversation. Sarah was devastated by the loss of the man who had taught her everything about shooting and life. She almost considered requesting a delay in her deployment to deal with her grief, but she knew Frank would want her to complete her mission. He had taught her that Marines don't quit, even when things get difficult. Sarah returned to Camp Pendleton, more determined than ever, to prove herself in combat. The final week before deployment was a blur of briefings, equipment checks, and last-minute training. Sarah learned about the specific area where her unit would be operating, a mountainous region where Taliban forces regularly crossed the border from Pakistan. Intelligence reports indicated that several high-value targets were operating in the area, including bomb makers and commanders responsible for attacks on American forces. Sarah's unit would be tasked with hunting down these individuals and eliminating the threat they posed. On the day of deployment, Sarah stood on the tarmac at Camp Pendleton, looking at the transport aircraft that would take her to war. She was nervous but excited about the opportunity to finally use her skills in real combat operations. As she boarded the aircraft, Sarah touched the piece of metal from her grandfather's bullet, which she now carried in her pocket. She whispered a small prayer, asking for the strength and wisdom to complete her mission successfully. The aircraft lifted off into the clear California sky, carrying Sarah toward a destiny that would test everything she had learned about being a Marine and a sniper. She had no idea that within months, she would face situations that would require every ounce of her training and courage. The other Marines on the aircraft looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Some had heard about the female sniper who had graduated at the top of her class, but most had never worked with a woman in a combat role before. Sarah didn't mind their stares. She had spent her entire military career proving herself to skeptics. Now she would have the chance to prove herself in the ultimate test, real combat against a determined enemy in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. As the aircraft flew eastward toward Afghanistan, Sarah closed her eyes and thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a small town in Montana to the mountains of Afghanistan, she had followed a path that few women had ever taken. But Sarah Mitchell was not like most women. She was a Marine, a sniper, and a warrior prepared to face whatever challenges awaited her in the dangerous mountains of Afghanistan. Her real test was about to begin. The transport aircraft touched down at Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan on a dusty morning in March. Sarah stepped off the plane into air that was thin and dry, filled with the smell of diesel fuel and dust. The mountains surrounding the base were brown and barren, more desolate than anything she had seen during training in California. Her unit was assigned to Forward Operating Base Chapman, located in a valley about 60 miles from the Pakistan border. The base was small and austere, surrounded by concrete barriers and razor wire. Taliban forces regularly fired rockets at the base from the surrounding mountains. Sarah's commanding officer at Chapman was Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, a veteran of 3 previous deployments to Afghanistan. Webb had heard about the female sniper joining his unit, and he had mixed feelings about the assignment. He needed skilled snipers, but he was concerned about how his soldiers would react to a woman in a combat role. During her first briefing at Chapman, Sarah learned about the challenges her unit faced. Taliban forces controlled much of the surrounding territory, using the mountainous terrain to launch attacks before disappearing back across the border into Pakistan. American forces were trying to disrupt these operations by targeting key leaders and supply routes. Sarah's first assignment was to support a patrol searching for an improvised explosive device factory in a nearby village. Intelligence reports suggested that bomb makers were operating in the area, creating the roadside bombs that had killed dozens of American soldiers. The patrol would be led by Captain Mike Torres, an experienced infantry officer who had requested sniper support for the mission. Torres had never worked with a female sniper before, but he had heard impressive things about Sarah's shooting abilities from other officers. Sarah and her spotter, Sergeant First Class David Kim, moved into position on a ridge overlooking the village before dawn. The patrol would enter the village at sunrise, and Sarah's job was to watch for Taliban fighters who might try to ambush them. Through her scope, Sarah studied the village carefully. It was a collection of mud brick buildings, connected by narrow alleys and dirt roads. She identified several positions where enemy fighters might try to set up ambushes, including rooftops and a small cemetery on the edge of the village. The patrol entered the village as planned, moving carefully from building to building. Sarah watched through her scope as the soldiers searched for signs of bomb-making activities. Everything appeared normal until movement caught her attention in one of the buildings. A man with an AK-47 rifle was positioning himself in a window, preparing to fire on the patrol below. Sarah could see that the soldiers were unaware of the threat. She had a clear shot at about 400 yards, but she needed permission to engage. Overwatch to patrol leader, Sarah radioed to Captain Torres. I have eyes on armed individual in building 3, second floor window. Permission to engage? Torres immediately understood the situation. His soldiers were exposed and vulnerable. Permission granted. Take the shot. Sarah controlled her breathing and squeezed the trigger smoothly. The bullet flew true, striking the Taliban fighter before he could fire on the patrol. It was her first kill in combat, but she felt no emotion about it. Her grandfather had taught her that sometimes taking a life was necessary to save others. The patrol completed their search and found evidence of bomb-making activities, including several partially constructed explosives. Sarah's quick action had saved American lives and allowed the mission to succeed. Word of Sarah's successful engagement spread quickly through the base. Some soldiers were impressed that the female sniper had performed so well in her first combat situation. Others remained skeptical, arguing that one shot didn't prove anything. Over the following weeks, Sarah participated in numerous missions throughout the region. She provided overwatch for patrols, supported raids on Taliban safe houses, and gathered intelligence on enemy movements. Her shooting skills and tactical awareness impressed even the most skeptical soldiers. During one memorable mission, Sarah's unit was tasked with eliminating a Taliban commander who was coordinating attacks against a key supply route. Intelligence indicated that the commander met with other fighters at a compound in the mountains every Tuesday morning. The mission required Sarah to position herself on a mountainside nearly 800 yards from the target compound. She and Sergeant Kim hiked through difficult terrain for 6 hours to reach the position, carrying all their equipment and supplies for a 3-day mission. They established a hide site among the rocks and waited for the target to appear. For 2 days, they observed the compound through their scopes, gathering information about the enemy's routines and security measures. On Tuesday morning, several vehicles arrived at the compound. Through her scope, Sarah watched as men emerged from the vehicles and entered the main building. One of them matched the description of the target commander. The shot would be extremely challenging. The distance was at the edge of her rifle's effective range, and mountain winds were causing her calculations to be more difficult. Sarah spent nearly an hour studying the wind conditions and making adjustments to her scope. When the target finally appeared in a doorway, Sarah was ready. She controlled her breathing and squeezed the trigger. The bullet traveled for what seemed like an eternity before striking the target. The Taliban commander was eliminated with a single shot. The success of the mission had immediate effects. Attacks along the supply route decreased significantly, and intelligence reports indicated that other Taliban leaders were afraid to meet in groups. Sarah's reputation as a deadly accurate sniper began to grow among both American forces and the enemy. But not all of Sarah's missions ended successfully. During a raid on a Taliban weapons cache, her unit walked into a carefully planned ambush. Enemy fighters had positioned themselves in multiple locations around the target building, creating a deadly crossfire. Sarah was providing overwatch from a position 500 yards away when the shooting started. She could see muzzle flashes from several positions, but the enemy fighters were well concealed. American soldiers were pinned down and taking casualties. Using her scope, Sarah began systematically identifying and engaging enemy positions. She eliminated 3 fighters in the first few minutes, but more kept appearing. The Taliban had planned this ambush carefully, using the terrain to their advantage. During the firefight, Sarah noticed movement in a building behind the American position. Taliban fighters were trying to flank the patrol, which would put them in a deadly crossfire. She radioed a warning to the patrol leader while engaging the flanking force. The battle lasted nearly 2 hours before American reinforcements arrived and forced the Taliban to retreat. Sarah had fired over 40 rounds during the engagement, eliminating 7 enemy fighters and preventing the flanking attack that could have wiped out the entire patrol. Despite her efforts, 2 American soldiers were killed and several others wounded in the ambush. That night, Sarah sat alone in her quarters, thinking about the young Marines who had died. She wondered if she could have done something different to save them. Sergeant Kim found her there and reminded her of something important. "You can't save everyone," he told her. "But today, you saved a lot of lives. Those soldiers are going home to their families because of what you did." As her deployment continued, Sarah's reputation grew throughout the region. Taliban fighters knew that an American sniper was operating in the area, and they began calling her the Iron Wolf because of her deadly accuracy and ability to appear anywhere. American commanders began requesting Sarah's support for their most challenging missions. She participated in operations to rescue captured soldiers, eliminate high-value targets, and disrupt enemy supply lines. Her success rate was remarkable. During one particularly dangerous mission, Sarah was tasked with supporting a special operations team attempting to capture a Taliban bomb maker. The target was hiding in a compound in a heavily defended valley, surrounded by dozens of enemy fighters. The special operations team needed to get close to the compound without being detected. Sarah's job was to eliminate any sentries who might raise the alarm. She positioned herself on a ridge nearly a mile from the target area. Using her scope, Sarah identified 6 sentry positions around the compound. The shots would have to be made in quick succession to prevent the surviving sentries from alerting the main force. The distances ranged from 600 to 900 yards. When the special operations team was in position, Sarah began her work. She eliminated all 6 sentries in less than 3 minutes, allowing the team to approach the compound undetected. The bomb maker was captured without a fight, and intelligence gathered from the raid led to the discovery of several other bomb-making facilities. But Sarah's most challenging moment came during her 6th month in Afghanistan. Her unit received intelligence about a major Taliban gathering in a remote mountain valley. Over 50 fighters were meeting to plan coordinated attacks against American bases. The mission was ambitious: eliminate as many Taliban leaders as possible during the gathering. Sarah would be part of a larger operation involving multiple sniper teams and air support. Sarah and Sergeant Kim moved into position on a mountainside overlooking the valley where the gathering was taking place. They had to hike for 12 hours through difficult terrain, carrying enough supplies for a week-long mission. The Taliban gathering was larger than intelligence had predicted. Through her scope, Sarah counted over 80 fighters, gathered around a collection of tents and vehicles. Many of them appeared to be commanders, based on their equipment and the way other fighters treated them. The operation was scheduled to begin at dawn, when most of the Taliban fighters would be gathered for morning prayers. Sarah and the other sniper teams would eliminate key targets simultaneously, while attack helicopters struck the remaining fighters. But something went wrong with the timing. One of the other sniper teams opened fire too early, alerting the Taliban to the attack. Instead of being caught by surprise during prayers, the enemy fighters scattered and began searching for the American positions. Sarah found herself in an extremely dangerous situation. Taliban fighters were climbing up the mountainside toward her position, while others were setting up heavy weapons to fire at suspected sniper locations. She and Sergeant Kim were trapped. Using her rifle, Sarah began engaging the fighters climbing toward their position. She eliminated several of them, but more kept coming. The Taliban knew approximately where she was located and were determined to capture or kill the sniper who had been terrorizing them for months. Sergeant Kim was wounded by rifle fire from below, leaving Sarah alone to defend their position. She continued firing at approaching enemy fighters while calling for extraction on her radio. But helicopter support was 30 minutes away, and the Taliban would reach her position long before then. Sarah made a difficult decision. She would have to abandon her carefully constructed hide site and move to a new position while under fire. This was one of the most dangerous things a sniper could do, but staying in place meant certain death or capture. Carrying her rifle and essential equipment, Sarah began moving along the mountainside while Taliban fighters fired at her from multiple directions. She used every bit of cover available, moving from rock to rock while occasionally stopping to return fire. During the movement, Sarah spotted something that changed everything. A group of Taliban commanders had taken cover behind some vehicles in the valley below. They were using radios to coordinate the search for American positions, making them high-value targets. Even though she was under fire and moving to escape, Sarah stopped and set up for a shot. The distance was over 700 yards, and she was shooting from an unstable position while enemy bullets whistled around her. Sarah eliminated the Taliban radio operator with her first shot, then quickly engaged 2 other commanders before resuming her movement. The loss of their communications coordination caused confusion among the Taliban fighters, giving Sarah the opportunity she needed to reach safety. She finally reached an extraction point where a helicopter could land safely. As she waited for pickup, Sarah could hear the Taliban fighters still searching for her on the mountainside. They never found the position where she had been hiding. The operation was considered a success despite the problems with timing. Sarah and the other snipers had eliminated over 20 Taliban fighters, including several important commanders. The enemy's planned coordinated attacks were disrupted, and their leadership structure in the region was severely damaged. But the incident had shown Sarah something important about herself. Under extreme pressure, with her spotter wounded and enemy fighters closing in, she had remained calm and continued to engage targets effectively. Her commanders began to realize that she possessed rare qualities that went beyond just shooting accuracy. Colonel Webb called Sarah into his office after the mountain operation. He told her that he was recommending her for a commendation and that higher headquarters was taking notice of her exceptional performance. "You've proven yourself beyond any doubt," Webb told her. "I've never seen a sniper operate as effectively under pressure as you did on that mountain. You're going to go far in this corps." Sarah appreciated the recognition, but she was more focused on the missions ahead. Her unit was scheduled to participate in a major operation against Taliban forces along the Pakistan border. Intelligence indicated that enemy fighters were massing for a large-scale attack against American positions. The upcoming operation would require all of Sarah's skills and experience. Unknown to her, it would also lead to an encounter with American Special Operations Forces that would change the course of her career forever. As Sarah prepared for the next phase of her deployment, she thought about how much she had changed since arriving in Afghanistan. The young woman from Montana had become a hardened combat veteran, feared by the enemy and respected by her fellow Marines. But her biggest challenges still lay ahead. The operation along the Pakistan border would test everything she had learned about warfare, leadership, and herself. It would also bring her to the attention of people who would recognize her unique talents and offer her opportunities she had never imagined. The operation along the Pakistan border was code-named Mountain Thunder, and it would be the largest joint action Sarah had participated in during her deployment. Intelligence reports indicated that over 200 Taliban fighters had gathered in a series of connected valleys, planning coordinated attacks against 3 American bases. Sarah's unit was assigned to provide sniper support for the main assault force, which included regular Marine infantry, Army Rangers, and a small team of Navy SEALs. The operation would last several days and cover dozens of square miles of mountainous terrain. 2 days before the operation began, Sarah was surprised to receive a summons to the base commander's office. She wondered if there was a problem with her performance, or if she was being reassigned to a different unit. When she arrived at the office, she found Colonel Webb waiting with a man she didn't recognize. The stranger was wearing army fatigues with no visible rank insignia, but his bearing and confidence suggested he was a senior officer. "Corporal Mitchell," Colonel Webb said, "I'd like you to meet Commander Jackson. He's here to observe your performance during the upcoming operation." Commander Jackson stepped forward and shook Sarah's hand. His grip was firm, and his eyes studied her with the intensity of someone who was used to evaluating people quickly. Sarah noticed that his hands had the calluses of someone who spent a lot of time handling weapons. "I've been hearing interesting things about your work out here," Commander Jackson said. "Your reputation has reached some very high levels in the special operations community." Sarah wasn't sure how to respond. She had been focused on doing her job and supporting her unit, not trying to impress anyone in special operations. "I'm just doing what I was trained to do, sir." "That's exactly the attitude we like to hear," Jackson replied with a slight smile. "I'll be observing the operation from a command position. I'm particularly interested in how you handle yourself during extended operations under pressure." After Commander Jackson left, Colonel Webb explained that the visit was unusual, but not necessarily concerning. "The special operations community is always looking for talented people," he told Sarah. "Just focus on the mission and let your performance speak for itself." The operation began before dawn on a cold morning in October. Sarah and Sergeant Kim, who had recovered from his wounds, moved into position on a ridge overlooking the primary valley where Taliban forces were concentrated. Their job was to provide overwatch for the main assault force and eliminate any targets of opportunity. The assault began with artillery strikes on known Taliban positions, followed by helicopter insertions of American forces at multiple points around the valley. Sarah watched through her scope as soldiers rappelled from helicopters and began moving toward their objectives. Almost immediately, Taliban forces began responding to the attack. Sarah could see muzzle flashes from multiple positions as enemy fighters engaged the American forces. Through her scope, she began identifying targets and preparing to engage. Her first target was a Taliban fighter manning a heavy machine gun position that was firing on one of the helicopter landing zones. The distance was approximately 650 yards, with a crosswind that required careful adjustment. Sarah eliminated the machine gunner with a single shot, allowing the helicopter to land safely. Over the next 6 hours, Sarah engaged targets throughout the valley. She eliminated snipers, machine gunners, and commanders who were trying to coordinate the Taliban defense. Her shooting was so accurate that enemy fighters began avoiding any position where they might be visible from the ridge. During the afternoon, Sarah observed something that concerned her. A group of Taliban fighters was moving through a ravine toward the position held by the Navy SEAL team. The SEALs appeared to be unaware of the approaching threat. Sarah radioed a warning to the command post, but the SEALs' radio operator had been wounded and they weren't receiving communications. The Taliban fighters would reach the SEAL position in less than 10 minutes. The distance to the ravine was over 800 yards, at the extreme range of Sarah's rifle. The targets were moving, and she would have to lead them significantly to account for their movement. It was one of the most challenging shots she had ever attempted. Sarah tracked the lead Taliban fighter through her scope, calculating his speed and direction. She controlled her breathing and fired just as the fighter moved into a small clearing. The bullet struck him center mass, and he collapsed immediately. The other Taliban fighters took cover, but Sarah continued to engage them as they tried to move through the ravine. She eliminated 3 more fighters before the rest retreated. The SEAL team's position was secure. Unknown to Sarah, Commander Jackson had been watching her performance through binoculars from the command post. He saw her eliminate the threat to the SEAL team under extremely difficult conditions, making shots that would challenge even the most experienced snipers. The operation continued for 3 more days, with Sarah providing continuous support for American forces throughout the valley. She eliminated over 20 Taliban fighters and disrupted numerous enemy operations. Her accurate fire was credited with saving dozens of American lives. On the final day of the operation, Sarah faced her most challenging situation yet. Intelligence indicated that a high-value Taliban commander was hiding in a fortified compound at the far end of the valley. A SEAL team had been tasked with capturing him, but they were pinned down by heavy fire from the compound. Sarah was positioned nearly a mile from the compound, which put the target at the absolute limit of her weapon's effective range. The SEAL team leader radioed that they needed immediate sniper support, or they would have to withdraw without completing their mission. Through her scope, Sarah could see several Taliban fighters in windows and on rooftops around the compound. But the most dangerous threat was a sniper in a tower who was keeping the SEALs pinned down. He had to be eliminated first. The shot to the tower was approximately 950 yards, in difficult wind conditions and with the target partially concealed behind cover. Sarah spent several minutes studying the wind patterns and making calculations. She would get only one chance at this shot. Sarah controlled her breathing and squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew for what seemed like an eternity before striking the Taliban sniper. He collapsed immediately, and the SEALs began their assault on the compound. Over the next 20 minutes, Sarah systematically eliminated every Taliban fighter who tried to oppose the SEAL advance. Her accurate fire allowed the team to capture the high-value target and complete their mission successfully. After the operation ended, Commander Jackson approached Sarah at her position. He had hiked up the mountain to speak with her personally, which was unusual for someone of his apparent rank. "That was some of the finest shooting I've ever witnessed," Jackson told her. "That shot to the tower was extraordinary, but what impressed me more was your tactical awareness throughout the entire operation." Jackson explained that he wasn't just any observer. He was the commanding officer of a special operations unit that recruited the most talented soldiers from all branches of the military. His unit performed missions that were so classified that their existence was known only to the highest levels of government. "We've been watching your career for several months," Jackson said. "Your combination of shooting skills, tactical intelligence, and performance under pressure is exactly what we need for our missions." Sarah was stunned by the offer. She had never considered leaving the Marine Corps, and she knew very little about special operations beyond what she had seen in movies. Jackson explained that the selection process would be extremely challenging, but successful candidates would have opportunities that didn't exist anywhere else in the military. "I need to think about this," Sarah told him. "The Marines have been good to me, and I have obligations to my unit." Jackson respected her loyalty, but urged her to consider the opportunity carefully. "You have talents that could make a significant difference in protecting our country," he said. "We don't make offers like this often." Sarah spent the next several weeks finishing her deployment in Afghanistan. She continued to excel in her missions, but Jackson's offer weighed heavily on her mind. She talked with Sergeant Kim and Colonel Webb about the opportunity, seeking their advice. Both men told her that she would be crazy not to consider the offer seriously. "You've outgrown what we can offer you here," Webb told her. "This is a chance to use your abilities at the highest level." When Sarah returned to the United States, she had made her decision. She would accept Jackson's offer and attempt to join his Special Operations Unit. But first, she had to complete the most challenging selection process in the American military. The selection course took place at an undisclosed location in the mountains of Colorado. Sarah was one of only 3 women among 40 candidates, all of whom were experienced special operations soldiers from various branches of the military. The course lasted 8 weeks and included physical fitness tests, advanced marksmanship training, psychological evaluations, and tactical exercises that pushed candidates to their absolute limits. The failure rate was over 70%. Sarah's Marine training served her well during the physical portions of the course. but the psychological tests were unlike anything she had experienced. Instructors used stress techniques designed to break down candidates and reveal their true character. During one exercise, Sarah was placed in a simulated prisoner of war camp where instructors tried to break her will through psychological pressure and sleep deprivation. She had to maintain her cover story, despite constant interrogation and harassment. The marksmanship portions of the course were extremely advanced, requiring shots at ranges and in conditions that most snipers never attempted. Sarah's natural abilities and marine training allowed her to excel in these portions of the course. The final exercise was a week-long mission in the mountains where candidates had to complete various objectives while being hunted by instructors playing the role of enemy forces. Sarah worked as part of a 3-person team that had to gather intelligence, eliminate targets, and extract without being captured. Her team's performance was flawless. They completed all assigned objectives and avoided capture despite intensive efforts by the instructor team to find them. Sarah's shooting skills were crucial to their success, as she eliminated several enemy positions that threatened their mission. When the course ended, only 11 of the original 40 candidates had successfully completed all requirements. Sarah was not only among the successful candidates, but was ranked in the top 3 performers overall. Commander Jackson personally congratulated Sarah on her achievement. "You've just completed one of the most challenging military training courses in the world," he told her. "Very few people have what it takes to succeed here." Sarah's new unit was designated simply as Unit 77, and its mission was to conduct operations that were too sensitive or dangerous for conventional special operations forces. Team members came from all branches of the military, but they were officially assigned to a cover unit that existed only on paper. Her first assignment with Unit 77 was a mission to eliminate a terrorist leader who was hiding in a country where American forces weren't officially operating. Sarah would be part of a 4-person team that would infiltrate the country, locate the target, and eliminate him without leaving any evidence of American involvement. The mission required Sarah to make a shot from over 1,000 yards in an urban environment where civilian casualties were unacceptable. She spent weeks studying satellite images of the target area and practicing similar shots at a remote training facility. When the mission was executed, Sarah's shot was perfect. The terrorist leader was eliminated while he met with other conspirators in a building that American intelligence had been monitoring for months. The team extracted without being detected, and the mission was never officially acknowledged. Over the following years, Sarah participated in dozens of similar missions around the world. She operated in countries where American presence was denied, eliminated threats that conventional forces couldn't reach, and gathered intelligence that influenced major policy decisions. Her reputation within the special operations community became legendary. Other operators called her Iron Wolf, the same nickname the Taliban had given her. In Afghanistan, she was considered one of the most skilled and reliable operatives in the entire special operations community. But Sarah's career took an unexpected turn during a mission in Eastern Europe. While conducting surveillance on an arms dealer who was selling weapons to terrorist groups, her team was discovered and attacked by hostile forces. During the firefight that followed, Sarah was wounded by shrapnel from a grenade explosion. The injury required surgery and months of rehabilitation, during which time she was assigned to a training position at the Special Operations School. As an instructor, Sarah trained new candidates in advanced marksmanship and tactical procedures. She enjoyed teaching and found that she had a talent for identifying promising candidates and helping them develop their skills. But Sarah's most important contribution as an instructor was inspiring other women to pursue challenging roles in special operations. Her success had proven that gender was not a barrier to excellence in the most demanding military occupations. Today, Sarah serves as the senior marksmanship instructor at the Special Operations Training Facility. She has trained hundreds of operators who have gone on to successful careers in units around the world. Her students know her simply as Chief, but they all understand that they are learning from one of the most accomplished snipers in military history. The young woman from Montana who grew up hunting with her grandfather had become a legend in the special operations community. Her journey from small-town girl to elite operator had inspired a generation of women to pursue their dreams regardless of the obstacles they faced. Sarah's story proves that talent, determination, and courage can overcome any barrier. She had shown that the most important qualities of a warrior have nothing to do with gender, and everything to do with character, skill, and the willingness to serve something greater than oneself. The girl they underestimated had become the woman who redefined what was possible.